Elbaf's final battle is going to be a lot bigger than readers realize. While the arc is starting small with just 3 Gods Knights, all signs point towards the arc snowballing into a full-fledged invasion of the entire Gods Knights in Elbaf's final battle to subjugate the giants once and for all. But on top of that, the wheels have actually been set in motion in 2 corners of the New World for the red-haired pirates and the Blackbeard Pirates to also converge on Elbaf as well, setting up a showdown of 4 Yonko-level crews for a climax comparable in scale to Wano and Marineford. But even more importantly, this crucial final battle of Elbaf is actually narratively set to be the kicking off point for the entire final war of One Piece. This island that we were told from the start is Warland, the birthplace of war, is also symbolically where the One Piece world Ragnarok, the war to end all wars, is set to begin. Let me break down for you the full picture of the surprisingly grand scale that the Elbaf final battle is actually heading towards, as well as narratively how this will be the powder keg explosion that will set off the final war of all of One Piece. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. And it's time that you stopped wasting time. Almost every day you do a thankless job, which is cooking. Listen, people are not meant to work 8 hours a day and then commute 45 minutes home and then have to cook for another hour just so that they can eat. That's why Factor, the sponsor of this video, is offering my viewers 50% off a full box of ready-made meals. Factor is the best meal prep service out there. It makes it so that you never have to cook again, because every week you can just pick from a selection of chef-prepared meals and have them sent to you. And the best part is, you can pick exactly as many as you want. This week, I only needed 5, but some weeks I also want to eat Factor for lunch, so I get 10. And seriously guys, these meals are really good. My personal favorite is the pasta with chile queso chicken thighs. And pretty quickly you'll see that Factor has great options for pretty much any type of food that you want. So if you want to try Factor out, just head to factor75.com or click the link in the description below and use code 50morge to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code 50morge at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. So that aside, to begin with, Elbaf was always destined to turn into one of the most large-scale battles in One Piece history, because thematically, Oda generally centers story arcs around the theme of the island itself. For example, the Country of Love, Dressrosa, centered around the theme of the heart. The dry desert island of Alabasta featured a conflict about a nation that was slowly dying. The impossible land in the sky, Skypiea, centered around the theme of dreams. And with Elbaf, well, Elbaf is an island defined for us from the very beginning by war. This is Warland, the birthplace of war. And even though the island has tried to change its identity, it's very clear that war is coming, whether the people of Elbaf want it or not. The moment Oda established what the island was about, he stamped in for us what the primary theme of this arc would be about, meaning that despite Elbaf's relatively tame start, this is merely the calm before the storm. This is very much a story about war. And what we have begun spiraling towards is in fact one of the greatest conflicts in One Piece, and a segue into the final war itself, as the island will once again become the birthplace of war. And in congruence with the theme, in terms of plot structure, that is also what Elbaf was always destined to become. Elbaf's placement in the story is very specific. It comes as seemingly the penultimate arc in the final saga, the arc right before the actual final war of One Piece begins. Remember, we've been clearly told the final war is what's next, right around the corner. Egghead was an explicit warning that this is what is about to happen next. Vegapunk's entire speech came down to the final proclamation of the advent of the World War, and this was confirmed immediately after, that with Vegapunk's words, the final World War is about to break out. And so right before this final war arc begins, we are dropped off here at Elbaf, an arc where, what do you know, the island's central theme itself is literally war. Before the final war the entire story has been building up to breaks out, we are literally having a storyline in an island that is known as the birthplace of war. Could Oda possibly be any more on the nose with his setup here? As such, even though the island begins in a remarkably peaceful state, with very little conflict for dozens of chapters compared to most One Piece arcs, that's also the point. The transition of Elbaf from idyllic peace to all-out war is supposed to be a microcosm for what is about to happen to the entire world of One Piece in general. And remember, as Oda always does, the events of Elbaf are of course going to spiral into the outside world as well. Just as Egghead's events didn't happen in a vacuum, but rather the Straw Hats' conflict there spiraled into the entire world being flipped on its head, so too is the Battle of Elbaf likely to directly turn into a catalyst for the next step of the story, which is the final war of One Piece itself. Essentially, the final battle of Elbaf may actually turn into the first battle of the final war of the entire world. After all, that is very likely why Elbaf was specifically written to be based on Norse mythology, as all of Norse mythology centers around the idea of Ragnarok, the great battle at the end of days to end the world. Oda always planned on the penultimate arc of the story being the one where the final war is finally triggered, and so that's precisely why he designed the island of that arc with that in mind, with the theme of the island itself being war, the identity of the island being the birthplace of war, and the mythology that was drawn upon to design the island was Norse mythology precisely because this is where One Piece's version of Ragnarok would begin. Oda has been beating this idea in over our heads over and over throughout Elbaf. The end times are here, the end times are here, the final war is starting now. And so don't be fooled by the fact that we're only dealing with 3 Gods Knights at the moment. This is merely the opening bout. This arc was always set to turn into an unimaginably huge conflict, as it is literally supposed to launch the final war of the entire story. So with that in mind, who are the players that will be involved in this grand climax of Elbaf? Well, obviously, for one, the Gods Knights. Now again, the conflict may have seemed small so far because we've only been dealing with a few Gods Knights. However, what we're getting so far is just the initial teaser to establish the group. By the end of the arc, we will likely see a full-scale invasion of Elbaf by the entire Gods Knights. This is because, to begin with, plot-wise, this simply follows, as the goal of the Gods Knights is to subjugate the entire island of Elbaf and force the Giants to become the foot soldiers of the Celestial Dragons. That goal is pretty clearly not going to be successful just through this initial assault, because even if the Gods Knights will end up coming away from this with some success, perhaps even taking some captives with them back to Varijua, the plot of the entire arc isn't just going to end here 25 chapters in. The Giants of Elbaf aren't just going to all agree to be slaves and the story is resolved permanently. Obviously, the Gods Knights are not going to have an absolute victory here and claim Elbaf as subservient to the Celestial Dragons, meaning that the Gods Knights will have to return in full force at the end of the arc to actually complete their mission and make the Giants officially their servants. And we know that when they return, it will likely have to be the full force of the Gods Knights and not just 3 of them, as it was clearly established that the Gods Knights now know that the Yonko Straw Hat Luffy and his crew are on the island, and they are explicitly aware that just a few Gods Knights have no hope of defeating a Yonko and his crew. Add in Skopper Gaban's surprise presence, and it is now very clear to the Gods Knights that they will need significantly more forces for their eventual subjugation of the island. That means that for the second invasion of Elbaf, they will have to send the entire Gods Knight squad so that they can defeat a Yonko crew and an additional legendary pirate as well. And considering the individual Gods Knights that we've been seeing so far are at least Yonko commander level or higher, all 9 Gods Knights arriving at the same time will be easily the strongest force that the Straw Hats have ever faced. But outside of plot reasons, the largest indicator that we will be seeing the arrival of the full Gods Knights force in Elbaf is the previous arc, Egghead Island. If we zoom out very quickly, we know that everything in the story is leading to the grand finale, the final war, and the primary focus of the final war is going to be defeating the Celestial Dragons. Whereas all the other primary players in the final war have already been established far in advance, the primary forces of the Celestial Dragons have been, up till now, a mystery. That's why, in the preceding arcs, before the final war begins, Egghead and Elbaf, Oda has been taking the time to establish the Celestial Dragons' forces. In Egghead, it was all about debuting the Gorsei, the Seraphim, and the upgraded Pacifista. And now, in Elbaf, it's time for the Gods Knights. Just as Egghead was a major showcase where we got to see all of the Gorsei in action for the first time to establish their threat and strength before the final war, so too is it now time for the Gods Knights to have their showcase in Elbaf. That means that we're going to be seeing all the Gods Knights in action in the finale of Elbaf, because just as with the Gorsei, the entire point is to establish these fighters before the final arc of One Piece begins. So this on its own sets up for a major large-scale showdown at the end of Elbaf, and unlike Egghead Island, running is not going to be an option, as this time a nation is at stake and it needs to be defended, meaning that we're not in for just a great escape, we are in for a huge battle at the end of Elbaf, against a group that is likely even stronger than any Yonko crew, and one way or another, they will have to be driven away. And one major clue as to how such a force can be fended off is with the added aid of the red-haired pirates. Shanks is going to be in the Elbaf arc. It is at this point near impossible for him to not feature in it. The number of Shanks references throughout Elbaf is genuinely insane. Literally nearly every other chapter in this arc has talked about him. The two most significant characters from the island so far are Shanks' mortal enemy who was defeated by him and who is now bent on getting revenge, and Shanks' biggest admirer who is trying to be like him. The primary antagonist of the arc is literally Shanks' evil twin brother who is also talking about Shanks. Everywhere we go in this arc are characters who are directly tied to and are talking about Shanks. And Luffy's entire storyline so far in this arc has literally been centered around trying to get to Shanks. Hell, the first 2 chapters of Elbaf were literally starring Shanks. Oda has even outright stated that we will know we are in the final saga of the story when Shanks is appearing frequently. Elbaf has for a long time been an arc specifically written to bring Shanks into the spotlight as a main character again. Based on all the backstory hints that we've been getting, this will be the arc where we actually learn about Shanks' story, unveiling the actual person behind Luffy's idealized image. It also helps that this arc is set to be very Usopp-centric as well, and Usopp's father, the missing piece from Usopp's own formative backstory, just so happens to be on Shanks' crew and is clearly being focused on heavily by Oda. The simple reason that Shanks is not in the arc yet at this moment in time is that this entire plot point of 3 Gods Knights terrorizing Elbaf would not be possible in the slightest with the red-haired pirates around. Oda already had to stretch to make sure that the monster trio were absent during this assault. And more importantly, the promise that Luffy and Shanks made was that their reunion would only happen once Luffy had become a pirate as great as Shanks, with a crew even greater than Shanks's. And at the moment, the Straw Hats are going through a bit of a low point, for the same reason that Shanks did not want to meet Luffy at Marineford, and the same reason Shanks still didn't feel it was quite yet time to meet Luffy even after Whole Cake Island. Oda is not going to have Shanks meet Luffy and the Straw Hats until they are truly worthy, meaning at the very least, the Straw Hats will have to improve a bit more by the end of Elbaf before it's time for the red-haired pirates to arrive. This is likely why Oda has set up an outside storyline for Shanks at the moment to keep the red-haired pirates busy while the first act of Elbaf unfolds. But Oda made it clear from the get-go that this is going to be a Shanks-centric storyline, and he has made the plot of the arc essentially build towards him in many ways, setting up for the red-haired pirates' arrival in the latter part of Elbaf. And if you question at all that Shanks and the red-haired pirates will ultimately come to Elbaf, just remember, it has been clearly established that the giants of Elbaf are Shanks' friends. And what is the one defining rule of Shanks? What does he never ever forgive? No one, absolutely no one, harms Shanks' friends. The simple fact that Elbaf is being attacked right now and has been marked for conquest by the world government, with a larger final assault coming in the near future, means that without a doubt, Shanks and the red-haired pirates will return, because they are not going to abandon their friends. That is simply what Shanks guaranteed from the very first chapter of the story. This means that the grand finale of Elbaf is guaranteed to feature not only 1, but 2 Yonko crews, alongside the entire nation of Elbaf going up against the Gods Knights. This alone is a setup that rivals the scale of Wano's final war. But there is still one final piece that takes things to an even more unprecedented level. But first we have a huge announcement. The end is here. The World of One Piece travel poster collection is finally at its conclusion. And so for the grand finale, we are opening up all the previous islands from the World Tour back for you this month so you can complete your collection, along with the final batch of islands you can get for your walls: Baratier, Arlong Park, Logtown, and Windmill Village. And for this grand finale, this month you can even pick any 2 posters you like from the entire collection and get 2 more posters for free. If you're trying to catch up to the entire travel poster collection and there are just too many to choose from, you can even get the complete World of One Piece bundle and pick and choose 15 travel posters to get them at an even bigger discount. With this, the entire story of One Piece is complete. All the major islands we've seen throughout the story are available this month with major discounted bundles, so make sure to get your travel posters today. Blackbeard the Spoiler will also be making his surprise appearance at the end of Elbaf. Not necessarily throwing his hat in the race in the Battle Royale. No, Blackbeard, as seen with the Marineford War, is a lot savvier than that. Blackbeard is a character who always swoops in only when the time is right. He makes his move when he knows he is going to get what he wants with minimal risk to himself. And Elbaf is the perfect opportunity. I've been talking about this in several past videos, but the one major move that everyone seems to be missing that Blackbeard is set to make is coming after Loki's fruit. We all know Blackbeard needs a 3rd Devil Fruit. He's not a Pirate King level threat just yet. And Blackbeard has always grown stronger by eating new powerful devil fruits. Blackbeard's flag has 3 skulls, indicating 3 is an important number to his theme. likely suggesting 3 devil fruits. And he already has a Logia and a Paramecia, so it seems that the third type, a Zoan, is what's missing. The simple answer as to the Zoan that Blackbeard is set to get is the very fruit that is the centerpiece of the entire Elbaf arc, Loki's legendary fruit. Remember, Blackbeard is a dark parallel to Luffy. He represents the opposite of everything Luffy represents. And as soon as Luffy turned out to have the Sun God fruit, it became extremely likely that Blackbeard's final fruit would be the dark counterpart to Luffy's fruit in a way. That dark counterpart has just presented itself. Loki also believes he has the Sun God fruit, and guess what? This fruit is also a legendary fruit, just like Luffy's. And on top of that, Loki seems to believe that this fruit would make him fit to be the destroyer version of the Sun God as believed in legends, as opposed to Luffy's more lighthearted fruit. If there is any Zoan that symbolically fits Blackbeard, it would be literally this, and only this. A legendary Zoan that is in some way also tied to the myth of the Sun God, just like Luffy's, but that represents destruction as opposed to liberation. Remember, whereas Luffy is always represented by liberation, Blackbeard is always represented by destruction, and both of his fruits so far consistently symbolize the concept of destruction. In fact, the notion of Blackbeard wielding the powers to destroy the world is something that has already been built up and established. Loki's Zoan that he believes is meant to destroy the world was literally just tailor-made for Blackbeard to get from the beginning. And the piece that really seals it is that Blackbeard and Loki's own fates seem to be intertwined, in that these two are very deliberately written to be the only 2 characters in all of One Piece who were inspired by Rock's D. Zebek as their idol growing up. They are the only followers of Zebek. However, whereas Loki is in fact a good, kind-hearted character deep down, and is likely walking down the wrong path in pursuing the destruction of the world, Blackbeard is the opposite. He is a heartless monster through and through, the true successor to Rock's D. Zebek, and the one who is genuinely destined to destroy the world unless Luffy can stop him. Whatever fruit Loki currently has, it is destined for Blackbeard, not Loki. And we know that Blackbeard will ultimately come in to kill him and take it, because that is what Blackbeard always does. Blackbeard never gets his fruits through good old-fashioned exploration and treasure hunting. The entire point of Blackbeard is that he gains power through cutthroat means. His growth is always stained with blood. He killed Thatch to get the Yami Yami no Mi, he killed his own father to get the Gura Gura no Mi. Blackbeard is not getting his final fruit without killing someone else. And the final character to die as a stepping stone on Blackbeard's journey is Loki, Blackbeard's counterpart disciple of Rock's D. Zebek, the one who's too kind-hearted to truly carry out Rox's will. And remember, while Oda is often hesitant to follow through on killing characters in One Piece, the exception is that Oda is consistently okay with killing characters who are already explicitly stated to be okay with death. That's why characters like Whitebeard, Ace, Pedro, and Ashura Doji were actually killed off. And that's why Loki from the very beginning has made it very clear that he has absolutely zero problems dying a warrior's death. If you disagree with this, then right now I challenge you, literally tell me in the comments if you have a better idea. What Zoan is there out there in the world right now that in any way fits Blackbeard better as his final fruit than Loki's Zoan? Is there any fruit that more perfectly completes Blackbeard as the symbolic dark parallel to Luffy and the avatar of destruction than what seems to be a legendary dark sun god fruit that is meant to destroy the world? If Blackbeard is going to become a Pirate King level obstacle for Luffy, it is going to happen now at the advent of the final war, and he is going to gain his final power-up exactly how he has always done it, by swooping in as an opportunist. Just like Marineford, the final battle of Elbaf will be huge, and just like Marineford, the final benefactor will be lurking in the shadows, ready to seize the opportunity to get the final fruit he covets, the legendary Zoan that will make him near unstoppable. So yes, even amidst a war between the nation of Elbaf, the Yonko Straw Hat Luffy, the Yonko Shanks, and the Gods Knights, there is one final player that will show up, and that is the Yonko Blackbeard and the Blackbeard Pirates, to capitalize on the battle and reap the spoils of war, much like we saw the Blackbeard Pirates do just one arc prior at the Battle of Egghead Island. So all in all, while Elbaf is starting small, it's about to snowball into something of unimaginable proportions, because this is an arc about war. We are at the birthplace of war, where Ragnarok will begin for the entire world. Let me know in the comments below how you believe this final battle will play out, and if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like and subscribe. And if you want to hear how I believe the battle will play out, you can listen to my podcast that just dropped by becoming a member or by supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below.